Our message today is going to be presented in two different parts. One right now, and then another one during our time of giving or offertory. And it is entitled, Infinitely Splendid. When asked how he was doing, a gentleman who came to the center once a year from Oregon on his vacation would always say, "I'm infinitely splendid." And he happened to carry around cards that said infinitely splendid on them, and he would then proceed to give you one of them. So, to me, he was on a mission. His mission in life, his personal mission, his calling, was to remind himself regularly that he is infinitely splendid and to pass that message on. Because I can't say I had ever heard those two words together, or if I did, they didn't trigger for me, but as soon as he said it, I was like, wow, you can feel that. You can feel it in his voice, in his eyes, in his animation of how peaceful he was at that idea of being infinitely splendid. His message was that he is, and so are, each of us. This idea gives way for the infinite to be recognized as the immortal, and to consider the splendor as infinitely magnificent, infinitely marvelous, and my personal favorite, infinitely glorious. Now we each have to pick and choose what words resonate with us to give the meaning that we intend for them to have. The word glory is in the Bible frequently in many different ways, and it isn't one maybe that we typically use, but I tend to really love the word. And I think it's because of my own personal interpretation of that word. So the word glory in the Bible comes from the Latin word gloria, and it is in the Old Testament the Hebrew word that is used every day in everyday speech back in those times to express a person's worth, and also to convey ideas of importance, greatness, honor, splendor, and power. Glory has a lot of personal meaning in there. So we are living in this human experience, and ultimately we are infinitely splendid beings. We are immortal, we are eternal beings, and we are magnificent, marvelous, and glorious. The topic for today is perfect for this holiday season, because many around the world are celebrating in various traditions, all with a message of love, renewal, and elevated consciousness of love, life, unity, and divine realization of wholeness or oneness. We often hear people say, wouldn't it be just wonderful if the love found in this season went year-round? Well, does it not? Maybe there are some things that need to fall away if it doesn't in your life. It's just a season to remind yourself constantly, because every time we see a sparkling light or a beautifully decorated home, it's a moment to feel that eternal glory that is our birthright. So perhaps you, like me, have already spent time considering or purchasing the gifts you intend to lavishly present to your loved ones or those that you encounter along the way. Your gifts may be of your time or your talent, or they could be a compassionate gift, a compassionate present. Or they could be an object, they could be objective. The source, however, regardless of your giving, is infinite. The source back of you is infinite. It is limitless, it is boundless, it is an endless supply of good. Along with our physical activities during this season of giving, we can also experience a deeper understanding of truth found in principle. To acknowledge and accept yourself as an infinitely splendid being means that you personally recognize your worth is not found in the physical absolute, but rather the soul body. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Personally, I consider that the immortality of the individual life has been conclusively proved, and I am convinced that you and I and everyone else are destined to live forever, because I believe that the life which we now experience is the life of God in us. Our spirit, soul, and mind are eternal. We are infinitely splendid, gloriously eternal."
And gloriously immortal. I believe our failure to comprehend our immortality is tied directly to our difficulty in comprehending the nature of eternity and infinity. And that, by the way, is also our biggest block in understanding quantum physics. None of it seems to make sense in our human experience of space and time. Even our most prevalent scientific opinions and investigative processes are based on outdated worldviews that perpetuate an existence limited by our perspective of time and space. For us to truly believe in infinity, eternality, and immortality, we must believe in a life that is transcendent of time and space. Ernest Holmes says, when the disciples of Jesus asked him what is God's relationship to the dead, Jesus answered, as we would expect a great spiritual and logical genius to answer. He said, He is not a God of the dead, but of the living. For in his sight, all are alive. In other words, Jesus was explaining to us, or to his disciples, that God is life. Life cannot produce death. Life continues to be life. Life continues to be life. We're so tied into our perspective of life and death, having beginnings and ends, that we are challenged to understand a more eternal possibility. However, there are some forms of life on earth for which that is not a stretch of the imagination. Have you ever heard of a planaria? Has anybody here heard of a planaria? Because I hadn't until this week. Planaria is a type of flatworm that lives in fresh and salt water. No matter how many times you divide the planaria, it will not die. On the contrary, new individuals are formed as many times as you divide them. Likewise, hydra, small freshwater invertebrates, regenerate damaged parts of themselves and don't age, and they don't die. They don't degrade over time like humans do. Hydra can regenerate lost body parts, including their heads. You can even cut a hydra into many pieces, mix all the cells, and put them back together to create a new hydra. In 2010, researchers sequenced the hydra's genome and discovered that it was the same number of genes as humans. So they're not any more advanced than we are. So should we not be able to do the same thing? Now the problem with this analogy of how water life seems to live forever is that it is based on human earthly existence, not on eternal life from a spiritual point of view. We seem to get stuck on the human earthly lifespan as the goal of life in general. The ultimate truth is that life is ongoing. It's an evolving process, and that evolution may be quite different than what we are used to, or life may be different than what we expect to happen in the future. But looking back, I realized that I really kind of like the idea of evolution, because I prefer the advances in my life now compared to the life I had in the 60s, particularly when I look back in the 60s and I see that I look at black and white televisions, no computers, and the clothes and the hairdos that I used to wear. I'm happy to go into the unknown future.
And I've seen those pictures too. I noticed that when David was talking, the planaria and the hydra that he talked about both come from the ocean. I think many of us know that ocean for our physical body is very healing, that salt water, but not only for that, but also for restorative of being in nature. So it is the spirit, the soul, and the mind, and of course the physical, because dust to dust, but the spirit, the soul, and the mind that make us eternal. They are also which makes us what we are here and now. To prove this for yourself, I have a little experiential, if you're willing to play along. We're going to check to see if you can produce the senses, the physical senses, without the physical feature. So if you're willing to play along, just close your eyes for a moment. And are you able to see a color? If I asked you to see a color, do you see a color? And if I ask you to change that to see something that is a scene, one of your favorite scenes, maybe a beach scene, a mountain scene, your backyard, do you see it in your mind's eye? And now if I tell you that in the back room here in the kitchen, I'm baking brownies for after service, and I love how chocolatey they smell. Are you able to smell that chocolatey goodness? Does it make you think, ooh, I hope she really is, because I want a brownie? And now I'm going to ask you to imagine that I'm handing you a bowl of lemon wedges, and you take one, and I ask you to put it in your mouth and then bite down on it. Does your mouth begin to water? All these ideas are occurring in your mind. You can open your eyes. Ideas occurring in your mind are proof positive that you are more than just a physical being. You are an eternally glorious being. Ernest Holmes says this: in a certain sense, each one of us is two persons. One is physical, and the other is mental or spiritual. The mental or spiritual uses a physical body in this world because it needs it. But at the time of death, the spirit within us, which is independent of this physical form, severs itself from it, or, as the Bible says, or ever the silver cord be loosed. Then shall the dust return to earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. In our teaching, the soul is synonymous with the words mind and law. So we use soul, law, and mind interchangeably, all meaning the same thing. Our soul, then, takes the thought of our conscious mind and acts upon it. It doesn't have the luxury to reject the thought that we place into it. It can't analyze it. It simply carries out the mission it's given, or the word that we place into it. Therefore, we have the power to activate our eternal glory, or to sit in the seat of negative ideas that will, in and of themselves, become our eternal. The choice is yours. What do you choose? I choose the infinitely splendid, to live in that space of actively identifying with my glorious eternal life. I am eternally glorious. Now, last week we talked about the importance and relevance of affirmations, and I trust you all did your homework and have affirmations all over the place, and life is making shifts for you as you. So let's try this one out together. I am eternally glorious. Ready?
I am eternally glorious.
Now, if those words infinitely splendid speak to you in a more meaningful way, then use those words. If eternally magnificent speaks to you, use those words. So we're going to create a chorus. We may all say eternally glorious, but we're going to create a chorus of I am, and then put our words in there. Are you ready? I am eternally glorious. Again, with greater feeling. I am eternally glorious. And so it is.
Okay, I put some thought into this, and it's kind of different, but it's something I've thought about a lot, and I wanted to share with you. I'm doing the Messiah this afternoon, and not too long ago I did a estimate, and I believe I've done Messiah almost 200 times, the solos in the Messiah. And I loved it, and I think I'm pretty darn good at it.
Yes, you are.
If they're still letting me do it after all this time. But when it comes down to this Christmas time of year, and I used to sing quite a bit around the area. I don't as much as I used to, but I still do a little bit. And Christmas time is kind of a challenge for me because we go into a lot of different churches, but they talk about Jesus in the ways that I don't necessarily resonate with. And sometimes I see the teachings of Jesus a little bit differently than others do. And when I do the Messiah, I quite often have a little challenged with that in terms of translating constantly everything I'm hearing. And I find that when I sing the songs, there seems to be a lot of stuff under the surface. So I'm kind of moving into my music appreciation teacher mode here a little bit, and I want to talk about some of the stuff that I pick up in this song, and then I'm actually going to sing them too, so you can expect that to come up. And some of these things are kind of incidental or they're just interesting, but some of them I think are pretty inspirational and important. And the music enhances the meaning of the words. And there's this thing called word painting that is used in the Baroque period, and George Friedrich Handel used it quite a bit. And it's where the notes actually match what is happening in the song, like the crooked straight, and thou art gone up on high, thou art gone up on high. So when you're rising up, it's going up. When it's straight, it's straight. When it's crooked, and the notes do those kind of things. Because it's kind of corny in a way, but it's really effective too. So I'll point to places you're going to hear those things. But the thing that really got me was the symbolism in the Christmas season and in different spiritual traditions. And it's important to recognize in this big book of all the songs from the Messiah, most of them come from the Old Testament, not the New Testament, which means they're coming from Jewish texts, not Christian texts. And a lot of them, I think, are reinterpreted or repurposed to match a Christian concept. John Shelby Spong talks about this a lot in his books. He talks about how the Jewish text prophesizes the coming of the Messiah, which wasn't Jesus. In fact, they still don't believe the Messiah was Jesus. They believe the Messiah is yet to come. But the Christian texts seem to plug Jesus into all those conditions and all those little categories where the Old Testament is predicting Jesus as the Messiah. I think it's kind of interesting. So when I look at those texts and I actually sing them, I'm thinking them in terms of the way the Jewish people meant them, not necessarily the way the Christian people have repurposed them or re-intended them to be. And I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think it's fine because the Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah and is the Messiah. That's fine for them. There are a lot of symbolisms in terms of light represents consciousness, but I think in the Jewish version it's a idea of personal growth and consciousness expansion. In the Christian version, it lends a lot of power to Jesus and imparts that power upon us. It's not something we are attaining on our own, it's something that is being imparted on us. And so the truth of the rising in consciousness is something we attain or awaken to, not something that is given to us. Maybe that's a subtle difference, but for me, it makes a lot of difference, particularly in science of mind. I believe that my rising in consciousness is evidence of me moving more into my spiritual truth of who I am. So I'm going to go through the text and talk about it real quick, like it talks about some things, and I will get to the point where I'm going to sing it too. It comes from Isaiah. Like I said, it's in the Jewish part of the Bible. And there's kind of a somber intro to it. It's really quiet and kind of minor key and dark. And it says, "For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and the kings to the brightness of thy rising." That's the first part. And then there's the second part. Another introduction that's even more somber. It says, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And they that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them the light hath shined." And of course, it comes from Old English, Old King James English. And so it uses the word thy and thou. And it's important for us to recognize that those are simply pronouns. They don't mean, like quite often in the Christian tradition, when you hear the word thee, they're talking about Jesus or God, a holy entity. But they're really just pronouns meaning you. So when you break it down this way, we'll go back to the first one. "For behold, darkness shall come, thou shalt cover the earth, and gross darkness the people." It's very somber because it's dark, and there's not much to see, and it's kind of very dim. And so it sets a tone for that. The people are unenlightened. So there's darkness. And it says, "But the Lord shall arise upon thee." The Lord to them is not Jesus in the Jewish texts, but in the Christian text we are to assume that the Lord is Jesus. It says, "It shall arise upon thee." Not on its own, but it's arising to and on, for within you. Where am I? Oh yeah. "And his glory shall be seen upon thee." Never just talked about the idea that glory is the importance. So the importance of God is projected onto you, not on the Messiah, not on the Holy One. It's on you. Big difference, isn't there? The glory is projected onto you. "His glory shall be seen upon thee, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light." The Gentiles are the people who don't believe, the people who don't know, and they will come to you like as a magnet because they will see something enlightened like an aura about you that's a little bit different, and so they're attracted to that. "And even the kings, the most powerful, knowledgeable people of the world at that time, are drawn to your brightness." They're drawn to the brightness of your rising. And I believe that rising is a rising of consciousness. So I think that's a really big difference between how the Jewish look at it and how the Christians look at it. He goes on, the second part, there's a break, by the way, and it starts with the second one. And once you get a somber intro, it's just minor, it's very chromatic, and it's going in directions you don't exactly know where the notes are going to go. And it says, "The people that walked in darkness." are people that walk it in darkness. It's Old English, so I say walk it in darkness. The people that walk in darkness, they're be very careful and slow because you can't really see where you are going. And every time I do this, the orchestra starts out too fast and I say, no, we need to slow it down a little bit because I'm walking in the dark here, people. And so because it really sets that mood. But as meandering around, wandering, or stumbling and bumping into things, the people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. And every time the word light comes in, it turns into a major chord. And the word light is held out for a long period of time because it's really important. So you're wombling, bumbling around in the dark, and all of a sudden there's a light. It's really exciting. Then he goes back into the bumbling around. And they that dwell in the land of the shadow of death. The shadow of death is, once again, kind of mysterious. And the music sounds kind of mysterious at that time. And it's because you really can't see through it. You really can't see through the shadow. But we know that the light is on the other side. Upon them hath the light shined. So every time the light comes in again, once again, it's bright. But it also says the people that dwell in the land of the shadow of death. Every time you hear the word death, it goes straight lines. The shadow of death. So those are the things I wanted to point out to you before I sing it. Now, my interpretation of it, I think, is really kind of unique, and I love it. And now, it used to be this song is kind of slow, and it's not as exciting as the other ones that I sing, but it's one of my favorite ones now because it has great meaning to me. So I hope I can shed a new light on this.
Do you want David?
I'm good. I'm good. For behold, darkness
and then